basically what we're going to start with now is our maintenance, and we're just going to do the basic stuff to get this running again on starter fluid. This car has a 20R. It's supposed to have 95 horsepower new and 120 foot-pounds of torque. It doesn't even have half that. I don't know what's been going on with it. It's always been like that. It's always been slow. A buddy of mine has a 76 Dasher, which has a 60 horsepower motor in it. He had the motor rebuilt, so we know it was right around the actual 60 horsepower number, and it is faster than this, and this is supposed to have way more horsepower, way more torque. So I want to get it running well, because it always has to start on starter fluid, and then I want to get it basically performing better. So we're going to start with the basic maintenance for something that's been sitting for 18 months for the most part, which is pull the battery out, do an oil change, replace the spark plugs, plug wires, check our fluids. You always check your fluids when you take something out of storage or you're going to really start something. And then we're going to start it again on starting fluid. After that, we'll start working on the stuff to get it run well. So I want to do things like check on the compression, do a leak down test. I have an air compressor in a kit, so hopefully we can get, I mean, we've done one before, hopefully we can get that going. And then we'll do I have a Pertronix igniter, which is like to help your ignition, cap and rotor, things like that. And I've never done this before, so I'm waiting to do them until after I've got the thing running to know it's running okay. And then we'll start looking at performance stuff. So that's everything. I'm gonna jack up the car. I have to be really careful doing that because it's old and the metal's trash, so I'll jack it under the engine and kind of front area and get it stood up, and then we'll do the oil change, pull the battery out, start doing the spark plugs and stuff after that. So let's get started. That's the battery out, and I'm just going to stick it on a trickle charger and get this thing up in the air. And through the magic of editing, it's up in the air. If you're ever working on a car this old, I forgot, because even the 944 was better than this. When I started working on this, I was jacking on the frame, the body frame, where it comes down. This is essentially like a truck body, and that frame is starting to bend in no matter where I jack. So it just doesn't have enough support, because especially if this is the side you start on, it's taking the whole weight of the car. Instead, I'm jacking where the engine and transmission meet, basically, and using that to lift the body of the car. I started to do that, started to smush a little bit. I am gonna have to have it slightly fixed at some point, least of my concerns, but yeah, jack under where the engine and transmission are on something old like this if you're worried about the metal, and depending on how the engine and transmission are bolted in there, right? So you need to kind of understand your vehicle. But that's it, it's up. Let's open her up, drain it, new filter, and yeah, get it done. So many spiders, by the way, you know the car's hit. So many spiders. So I'm gonna brave that fury and get over there and change that control. Oh yeah, I was a dickhead the last time I did this. This crush washer has one more good use in it. Why not? We're gonna install this again. Still doing a little bit of dripping, but I gotta go grab my kid and I don't want to leave this open. I won't be able to come down for like probably 6 hours. So, yeah, since I was a dickhead last time, I'm gonna be a dickhead this time. All right, so the oil is drained out of the car and we're ready to change the oil filter and fill it back up. Let's go take a look at where this oil filter is. So 20R truck motor, you see the white filter down there, and if you look below that, what you're gonna see is the motor mounts. So getting to it from below, there is a little space. The starter's up there on the left, see the starter there, the filter there. You can kind of sneak your hand in from below, but it's a real pain. In the past, what I've done is snuck basically the oil filter head to my wrench on it, and then an extension, and then a ratchet, but you can only go a little bit at a time. It's really hard to get it off and really hard to get it tight, but we're gonna give it a go. So wish me some luck. All right, so here's our filter, and this is the replacement filter. And I took a look at them, you know, I try to match them up. The holes look right, the threads look correct. The one thing is this is a little deeper, which is something I ran into the last time I did this. I'm not too worried about it. They're both designed for a 20R. If it was more specific fitment, I might be concerned, but if the 20R is a 20R, I think it should be fine. I think it will do the same thing. I think I'll keep an eye when I fill it. If it needs a tiny bit more capacity, like a 1/10 of a quart, then I'll be able to do that. But they look all right, so let's go install it. I don't want to screw up the oil filter too much. This is starting to slip a little bit. I think we got enough torque on there. I'll double check the torque spec and see if it seems close to, you know, that was like hand tight plus some turns with a 1/2-inch wrench. So I think it's on there pretty good. I'm gonna have to replace this oil filter wrench, so I'll make a note of that. But yeah, that's the oil filter done. Now let's fill this bad boy with oil. So that is the oil filled. I'm just gonna go and look for some leaks prior to starting the system, just to make sure everything looks okay. I wouldn't expect that to happen because there's really not any pressure, but if I somehow really nipped something and it wasn't sealed correctly, it'd be a good way to tell. All right, so I just went through a shop manual. I got this off of eBay right when I bought the Celica because I was really excited about it. It has specs for a whole range of years, but it's also incredibly detailed. First I looked up the torque spec on that oil filter housing. There really isn't one. Maybe that's common. Usually I just tighten stuff and like hand tight and like a 1/2 or full turn and call it a day. That's hand tight and 1/2 a turn, so I think we're fine. Everything should be fine there. And then I was looking up, we're doing spark plugs next, so I was looking up the gap for spark plugs, and it looks to be 0.028 to 0.032 on the 20R. So that should be easy to gap. We'll go pull them out, the old ones out, put new ones in, and then we'll do plug wires after that. Alright, those are all gapped. Let's go pull out the plugs and get on it. And as it always goes with this stuff, I actually don't have the right spark plug wrench for this, so I'm going to run to the store. I need to pick up a little bit of coolant anyway. So AutoZone, here I come. I'll be right back. We'll finish this up.
Check it. Yo.
Alright, so I started with the first 2 cylinders, and what I can tell is, one, I need a valve cover gasket, which I knew it was leaking a little bit, but there's definitely some oily residue in there, which could be leaking down from up above. And the other thing is that cylinder 1 is pretty gunky, it's hard to tell. It looks like it might be running a little bit rich. Cylinder 2 looks like it could have leaned out a tiny bit at one point, but is currently running rich. I think they're both a little bit rich. So we're gonna put the plugs in. I'll probably start doing plugs every oil change. I mean, these ones were a little expensive, but I could buy, you know, lower quality ones and just change them out every time to keep an eye on that and see where I'm at with fuel and air. I'm definitely gonna have to pull them anyway. You know, we've got plans to do side draft carbs and just, you know, check how the fueling is. I can dial them in by sound, but I'm also gonna want to check on it anyway. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm gonna put these 2 back in, and then get the plug wires on for cylinders 1 and 2, and then we'll do 3 and 4. So I got cylinders 3 and 4 out, same sort of thing, a little gunky, a little oily. It's okay for an old car. They look gapped a little bit small, but they, yeah, they're okay. There's nothing to worry about here for this stuff. I definitely want to do that valve cover, but get these in, get the last spark plug wires on. We'll do the ignition coil now if I can get to it easily, and then we'll check the fluids and get it started up. So I think we're gonna have to change the cap. Let me look and make sure the one I have measures right, and then it goes on as I would expect. Jeez Louise. The ignition coil that I took off here was completely degraded inside of these points. This is more than I wanted to change before trying to get it to start, but if I have to tow it, I will. I have nowhere to be with this thing, so fun, fun, fun. All right, so right in here, you can kind of see around this wire, I'm sorry to pull this off, there's a bunch of corrosion in there. So I am, the greatest view, yeah, see that there? Yeah, so there's a bunch of corrosion in there. The cap is basically, it's off. I pulled it off. I'm gonna check inside and see kind of what's going on. We're not gonna replace the distributor at this point. I don't feel like going top dead center. It just looks like it was corrosion looking at the inside on the cap itself. How this works is, I mean, it's mechanical electronics, right? So this is driven, has electricity, has our ignition coil that goes to it, and it's always kind of powered here. And then as it comes around, this is in time with our engine. You can, when we install a new distributor, which we will, you take this to top dead center before you pull off your distributor so you know where it is. There should be a mark on the crank pulley on the bottom there. You unbolt this completely, pull the whole thing out, because as the engine turns over, it moves this distributor around, and the constant electricity from our ignition coil is then powered to each cylinder depending on where the rotation is. So I'm going to replace that cap that we have down here, and hopefully that will prevent any further corrosion. This I mean, the points look okay. Yeah, so let's start with that. Yes. Yep, and they're both numbered, so I can just, I know this is 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and we can install. That will not do. That got stripped out, me trying to get it off. Still could kind of work, but I just ran to the hardware store and grabbed similar threads, or same threads, similar bolts. Gonna try and go a little bit shorter if I can. They're M5 by 0.8, so like a fine metric thread. Throw these on. Here's the fun part about doing this whole fiddly stuff. I don't know what every one of these wires does. I'm really looking into the wiring diagram to find out. So I just try to keep everything in place, but now everything's slightly like cocked, like angled. So I need to come in here, loosen everything up. You cannot access this bolt. This old one was locked up pretty good, so I stripped it a bit, bringing it out, and I'm glad I replaced it because I'm having to do some adjustments. I gotta loosen, I had to get this in the right place. I guessed pretty well there, but the entire ignition coil needs to be rotated. So now I gotta work on that. All right, that's the last of the ignition. Everything's back together, everything's tight, everything looks good. Next up, I'm gonna do fluids, and then we'll put the battery in and give it a try at a start. All right, time to try and give it a start. I'm gonna open the garage up, move stuff out of the way, drop it back on the ground, and then see if we can get it started. It's definitely gonna take starting fluid. It's an old carbureted car that's been sitting for 8 months, and yeah, it's just gonna need some love. Hopefully we didn't fuck up anything on the ignition, because we won't be able to tell if that's the reason why it's not starting. So let's give it a try and see what happens. we didn't total it. It runs. I am gonna put air in the tires, take it for a quick beat run, just to see how it does. Just right up my road and back, nowhere far. And then we'll check things out. We'll recheck. I gotta recheck all the fluids, make sure it's not pissing oil, everything like that. But we didn't screw it up taking all that ignition stuff apart, which most of that stuff isn't a big deal, but with having a separate ignition coil, all that stuff that comes with carburation, right? And there's different types, but having to take the cap off and replace that, there was just a bunch of things that I felt like I could have screwed up and I didn't. But I'm gonna go check on it, make sure it's staying cool, make sure we're not boiling over, and then I'll be back. All right, we finished up the maintenance. We got the car running. It had been sitting for like pretty much 2 years since I had done any real maintenance on it. It moved around just a little bit in and out of storage, and that was it. So what did we do? We pulled the battery out, did an oil change, spark plug wires, and when I did the spark plugs and spark plug wires, funny, I didn't put, oh yeah, spark plugs. When I put the spark plug wires in, I had to pull the ignition wire off, and I saw all the corrosion in the cap, which we weren't planning on doing until later, but it was easy enough and everything ran, so I pulled that off, did the ignition wire, checked all the fluids, finished up that plug wires, and then got it started with starting fluid. You guys saw I kind of cut part of that process out just because it took so long and I didn't want to like blow through a bunch of battery and memory. But it runs really high, it has an automatic choke, so once we got it going, it was running really high, and then kind of came down and got it out and around the neighborhood, and it went great. Yeah, I mean, we did all of that ignition stuff and it still runs, which is awesome. Playing with the cap and rotor, a little bit nervous about doing that, so I'm glad. We haven't done the rotor yet. We'll do the rotor after. We're going to kind of pull it off and take a look. What we'll have to do for that is get the engine timed up and all that sort of stuff, so we'll get into that later. But next time we're going to start doing that. We're going to do a compression test, a leak down test. We'll think about putting in a Pertronix igniter, which is essentially it runs off the cap and rotor, so we may do the rotor at that point. So it takes the ignition signal and basically amplifies it. So it's a whole thing. But yeah, that's it for this time. We finished up the maintenance and she's good to run. I'm gonna go clean her up and kind of shoot the introduction video now that she runs. I wasn't gonna introduce the car in here, so we'll grab some drone shots and just put everything together and it'll be a good time. Yeah, thanks for checking this out.
As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. It would really help me out. Tune in next time as we work on the Celica.